Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KB. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania project. This time we are working on WrestleMania 27, which took place on April 3rd, 2011, in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Georgia Dome. The announced attendance for this event was 71,617, with the tagline, "The biggest WrestleMania ever." Hosted by the jabroni beating, pie eating, most electrifying man in sports entertainment. Of course, I am referring to the one and only The Rock. After The Rock hypes up the crowd for about 15 minutes or so, we get into our first match of the evening. So, per usual, we will do this in order of which it occurred. We will give you a feedback of every single match, and then we will give you our feedback and overall rating of the entire event in WrestleMania as a whole. The first matchup of the evening has Alberto Del Rio with Brotus Clay going up against Edge with Captain Charisma Christian for the World Heavyweight Championship. And this Mania marks the very first time that World Heavyweight Championship title is defended to kick off the show. KP, thoughts on the opening contest of WrestleMania 27? Obviously, this is a very, I'm sure, hard moment for you to swallow at the time. This was the last televised event for Edge for quite some time, what many thought would be the last ever of his career. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one and overall feeling after this one was over.
Yeah, this is the most recent WWE match in history with Edge as a world champion in WWE. So that's quite crazy to think about. Obviously, he's had some WWE title matches since then, but yeah, not been successful on that return period that he did have. But yeah, when it came to this match specifically itself here, this was sort of like when I was like really, really into Edge and like when I was sort of like really getting into the product, generally speaking. And yeah, to see him retire like 5 nights later was really, really gutting and devastating. But alas, we had the match up here, the last one for Edge in 9 years, and he would go 1-on-1 with Alberto Del Rio. Honestly, it was a fine match. It was okay. It was decent enough. It wasn't anything special, I would say. And I'm not gonna like put any bias in here just because it's Edge. I'm gonna be honest. That's what we do. Outside interference played quite a bit, to be fair, in this one. Quite an important part. We saw Brodus Clay and Christian getting, in each other's faces on a couple of occasions. Brodus takes out Christian early on, and towards the end of the matchup, Christian does get back into the conversation, hits a nice little tornado DDT, taking down Brodus. And yeah, we do also have Ricardo Rodriguez, the custom ring announcer for Alberto Del Rio. He's also sort of like being a little bit of a mess, but not as much as Brodus Clay was. In terms of the match though itself, yeah, it was okay. It was decent enough. There are a few counters here and there. It was quite back and forth, as you'd expect from a World Championship matchup. Edge goes into this one with a little bit of a weakened arm, thanks to Alberto Del Rio and his sort of antics leading into the matchup. That basically mainly around the cross arm bar and the submission maneuver that he does display. And we see Alberto getting into that because he hits the cross arm bar properly after hitting an armbar sort of earlier on in the matchup, but he actually does the transition, the really nice sort of like spin into the armbar. And Edge transitions from it, gets the weight sort of down onto Del Rio into a pin instead. And Alberto kicks out, allows Edge to pop in a submission hold of his own. After a little bit of sort of, a struggle, Del Rio does eventually get out of it, and then we see both men back up to their feet. Edge sort of like hits a spear out of completely nowhere, I guess you could say, and just gets the victory there with the 1-2-3. So defends his World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 27 against Del Rio. It just, just a pretty decent matchup. Like, I wish I could say a lot more about it, but it was just good. It was fine, We see a little bit of post-match shenanigans. Edge heads up the ramp, celebrating with his win, and he gets to Alberto's car, and he sort of like teases that he's going to attack it and he's going to like start kicking it, and he does indeed do that in the end. Christian comes back up the ramp as well. A couple of moments later, he arrives with a pipe and a crowbar by the looks of things, and he keeps Del Rio at bay whilst Edge uses the crowbar to scratch up Del Rio's car, smashing in the windows, the windshield, and just posing on the top of the car with his title at the very end of the segment. There's always a funny moment. Well, I've watched this match quite a few times, but I love the smashing of the car afterwards, and I always find it funny that Edge just sort of like just stares down at Del Rio, then just elbow drops the top of the car. I don't know why. It's just a really comical moment for me personally. I always liked that. But yeah, Good match, but nothing too crazy. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It was fine for what it did. It started the show. Yeah, it was okay. What did you make of this one, Nick? Generally speaking, like your sort of like your vibes for this one, and yeah, how do you think it was in terms of a WrestleMania opener? Not quite what they normally go for, something a little bit different, but did it work?
Yeah, definitely seen matches that are worse to open. We've definitely seen matches that are better to open. This one kind of just in the middle there for me. It was a title match, to at least have that going for it. Had something on the line, but in terms of just what we got in ring, obviously you've hit most of it already. With Brotus and Christian kind of being there, not super involved, at least until the end there. But yeah, just kind of what we got before that, and yeah, the ending was quite sudden, kind of hit on that as well. So yeah, nothing crazy. I think both men are capable of better matches, and for whatever reason, this one just didn't quite have the length to make it a great match. But that being said, yeah, kind of similar to your rating, I did give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Definitely won't be my favorite match of the night, but was higher up there than you probably would have thought starting off the show. So in terms of the entire event, so yeah, with that 6.5 out of 10 for me, just kind of failed to do something memorable. I think funny enough, I think the most memorable part of this match was the post-match happenings and that of the smashing of the car. Poor Del Rio couldn't get any gold and then got his car smashed up to boot. So I have to feel a bit sorry for the guy there. I know you're not a fan of Del Rio at all.
He deserved it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I kind of thought that as watching it. So I'm glad that it was received well by you. So with that, we will move on to the next match, which has Cody Rhodes going up against Rey Mysterio, or should I say Captain Mysterio, donning yet another superhero inspired attire. The mask versus the knee brace. KP, what'd you make of this one?
This was a pretty solid matchup, to be fair. I quite enjoyed this one. A little bit of a back and forth, just generally really nicely flowing contest. The storytelling I thought was really good, to be fair, for in this one as well. And yeah, the commentary team sort of like really elaborated quite well on the history that sort of these two had going into it. You go back to when Rey Mysterio hit a 619 on Cody Rhodes earlier in the year, and sort of like the knee brace that he had, sort of like I don't know, just like broke the nose of Cody Rhodes, sort of leads to the whole sort of like undashing sort of vibe that we got going on here. And yeah, I think everything just worked out really nicely. It just had a really good flow to it, and it just seemed to work really well. And both men just had just a general nice say in the contest. And yeah, I mentioned storytelling because there's a lot of sort of like those elements that goes into it. You already mentioned, knee brace against mask, and it did really seem like that was like the main sort of takeaway from this one, and that's not a bad thing to say. It just worked out well. We see Cody tearing off the knee brace of Rey Mysterio before Cody's mask then comes off, sort of like taken off by Rey Mysterio afterwards. Rey uses that mask in a series of moves, like there's a couple of headbutts, and I think there's a diving headbutt as well from Rey Mysterio from the top rope. So he does sort of like make the most of it at one point. And he goes to take it off, gives it to the referee, and as the referee sort of distracted, sort of like giving it to the people at ringside, we see Rey Mysterio go for a diving attack. Cody Rhodes is out of the ring at this point after having already removed the knee brace of Rey Mysterio prior to this. And he goes and grabs the knee brace as Rey Mysterio is going for a diving attack, and actually smashes it against Rey Mysterio's face, and that sort of like takes him out of commission. Mysterio gets rolled back into the ring, and then Cody hits a crossroads in order to get the victory here and get the 1-2-3. But yeah, like I say, it was just smooth. Transitionally, just very effective. Nothing really felt out of place here. Yeah, it was just a pretty decent rivalry matchup between two men, and they told a good story, and it worked out. So yeah, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Quite liked it, to be fair. Was a fan of the contest, generally speaking. I think it just did what it needed to do, and yeah, it just was a nice little culmination of this rivalry. I'm not sure whether it did end here or not, but I think if it had, I don't really remember. It's been a long time, but if it did end here, I think that's not a bad way to do things, to be fair. But yeah, 7.5 out of 10, pretty solid for me. How did you rate this one, Nick? In terms of the general dynamic here, obviously you mentioned the knee brace against the mask. What did you make of that one, and in terms of how it sort of affected the overall matchup and the result?
Yeah, the commentators really hitting that mask versus brace here, and It got a good chuckle out of me that the commentators would say something, and they always tend to do this with the mask protecting his hideous face. Of course, using air quotes there. I felt like it's a bit much, but while Ray was wearing that knee brace that caused Cody to wear said mask, it was just kind of a very simple storytelling 101. And Cody felt like he controlled most of this match, but then both of their advantages, again using air quotes there, get removed, and then they use them against each other. Ray wearing Cody's mask, and then ends up using that as a weapon, which was very un-Ray like. At least for the majority of his career, was never one to kind of use heel-ish tactics. I know that's really the most he had there, but yeah, neither man really fought clean here, and thought that was just for Ray being the face here. I thought that was an interesting bit, but regardless, clearly the turmoil there was present. So yeah, a decent match as well. I think maybe a bit too hard hitting, at least on the commentary side of those advantages. I think we didn't need, we can watch the match. I don't think we need those hit as hard. It was quite obvious. So with that, yeah, I think the match was pretty good as well, kind of similar tune to what you're seeing there. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Nothing crazy, just a quality match. Given some time. So, yeah, with that, we will move on to the next match, which has the Core, spelled Corre, Wade Barrett, Heath Slater, Peter Gabriel, and Ezekiel Jackson going up against Kane, Big Show, Santino Marella, and Kofi Kingston in an 8-man tag match. KP, there is not a lot you can really say about this one, but for what we got, what did you make of it?
Well, you've basically just summarized my summary, I guess you could say. Yeah, there wasn't much to take in at all. It was a very quick match, not much content in this one whatsoever. It felt really rushed, and I guess my main take is that it was basically just a way to get 8 guys on the WrestleMania stage and give them a little bit of time just to have a bit of a moment, I suppose you could say. But yeah, there really isn't much to really go about it. We see like a sort of like a sequence of signature moves from I think pretty much everybody in the contest. And it gets to a point where we see Santino Marella in the ring with Heath Slater. He hits a Cobra on Heath, and Big Show then hits a knockout punch on Slater in order to get the victory. So yeah, the Core unsuccessful on this occasion here. Slater, Wade Barrett, Justin Gabriel, and Ezekiel Jackson. Yeah, not the greatest showing for anybody here, really. I guess you could say. Santino gets a little bit of a comedy moment, I suppose, at the end there, and Big Show, just has the deciding blow. But besides that, yeah, there wasn't really much to take in here. It's hard to really give it like a big sort of synopsis because it's just so short. But yeah, it just like I said, a way to get a few names on the WrestleMania stage and to give them at least a little moment here. That's the main take. I gave it a 3 out of 10. I don't know how much, and that might even be generous. I'm not entirely certain, but I guess nothing went wrong when it was in the match. It seemed to be flowing nicely. It's just, like I said, was a bit rushed and was a bit short. So hard to really give it anything higher than that. What did you make of this one? You got anything else to add, or yeah, is that basically it?
Yeah, nothing really to add. The only benefits of these kind of matches is that helps us kind of get through these often clogged Mania cards. But yeah, it's just basically this boils down to this wasn't worthy of being on WrestleMania stage. It really didn't serve any purpose. It didn't really, unless the purpose was to write off the Core for a bit to bring them back. Maybe you can bring them back and spell the faction name correctly. That's an option for you. Just one of those weird choices made by Vince. Add that to the bucket, if you will. But yeah, Santino getting the Cobra Strike and Big Show getting the weapon of mass destruction to get the win. What more can you really say? Just kind of what was the point? I think you walk away with. I won't give it a 2 out of 10 because it's kind of the basis for it. And as you said, nothing went wrong. It just, it lasted, under 2 minutes, I think. So 2.5 out of 10 to give you a slight nudge there. It was a match that was there, and that's kind of where it ends for me. With that, we'll quickly move on to the next match, which has CM Punk going up against Randy Orton, with new Nexus being banned from ringside. KP, what'd you make of this one?
Yeah, for what it was, I like this matchup. I thought it was a pretty good one, to be fair. After what we just saw, in the previous matchup, I think it was safe to say that we needed something a little bit of higher quality. I think we got that, to be fair. It was pretty good. I thought it was quite competitive between both men. I'd say back and forth, this one really was quite like that in parts. In the second half, though, more so than the first, we see Punk doing really well in the early stages, controlling most of the early offense in the matchup, and just being very methodical over Randy Orton. He's been very sort of strategic in the build going into this one. Punk says it's been like 2 years in the making this matchup. After Randy had punt kicked CM Punk a couple of years ago. So yeah, quite interesting. There's a lot of history and backstory going into this one, and you sort of felt the animosity as the match was going along as well. It had quite a personal feel and touch to the contest. I think that just sort of just goes to show both men really sort of delivered in that sort of sense as well with the storytelling aspect. And then, yeah, like I said, the first half was quite dominated by Punk and how methodical and strategic he was. But then we see Randy sort of fighting back, quite well towards the end of the matchup, sort of like being on top mentally, sort of playing some mind games with CM Punk. And a bit more about that. We see Randy with CM Punk down on the mat. He looks for an RKO at first, but he sort of changes his mind and he attempts a punt kick instead. He goes for the punt kick, but it actually collapses from his weakened knee, which has been sort of like a target from CM Punk in the matchup up until this point. I mentioned strategic, stuff from Punk earlier on, and that's what he was sort of capitalizing on. And yeah, Randy sort of collapses from the weakened knee, like I mentioned. And Punk gets back up, looks to pick up Randy Orton, and Randy literally attempts an RKO just out of pure, I guess, playing possum, you could say, maybe possibly. And Punk sort of is aware of the situation, shoves Randy Orton back down, denying the RKO attempt. And as Punk does that, he sort of just hightails it to the corner of the ring, and it actually ends up on the apron. So he works up into something like a springboard, waits for Randy to get up to his feet, and as he's going for a springboard, possibly clothesline or something, I guess you could say, Randy Orton transitions really nicely into an RKO, catches CM Punk in the process, and that'll be enough to get the victory for Orton and, defeat CM Punk. But yeah, it's just a nicely done match, to be fair. Like I mentioned, it had a few elements and a few layers, and I think they worked really nicely together here. It built up into that sort of 2-year build, and it felt like, yeah, these two men really hated each other, and the crowd were more so cheering Randy Orton here, but it did feel like both of them were just really, really vindictive towards each other, and almost both of them displayed, heel sort of personality traits. So that's quite interesting. But it worked. In my opinion, that's what I got from it, and I thought they just worked on that level as well. So I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Thought it was really, really solid. Just a really good match between both of the guys, and yeah, just did a good job of being quite compelling and entertaining to watch as well. What did you think though, Nick, in terms of how the commentary team sort of sold this one, the backstory going into it, what these two men did in the ring? Did you think highly of it as I did, or yeah, maybe not so much?
I did find that the kind of build up for this with the 2 years ago, I felt like that was maybe grasping at straws a bit. Like, oh, you punt kicked me 2 years ago, so I've never forgotten about it. These two make it work, but I just thought that was a bit random. But I think maybe whatever, it works. So for what it's worth, as you know, and I think I made it clear, I am not a huge fan of really either of these guys' in-ring work. But with that being said, both of these guys are very, very good, and this kind of ties in with what you were alluding to. The storytelling, the kind of selling of the feud. Both of these guys are well above average at doing just that, making the match feel important. But in terms of the in-ring action, for some reason, this match just felt to drag a bit. And I think that's kind of just Orton's style. And I know I've mentioned that several times throughout his career. This just kind of has that vibe to it, just very, very slow burn, which sometimes I can appreciate, but for whatever reason, I just have a hard time getting into Orton's matches. And Punk is kind of the same. Up until like the last few minutes where the reversals were, going absolutely off. Basically, when Randy started to go for the punt kick, but then his knee gave out. Obviously, Punk was very methodically working on that knee up until that point. So I don't think it was meant to burn the world, burn the world down or anything. But that's when it really got going and really had my attention. Unfortunately, I just felt like this match just took too long to get to that point. But once we did get there, that ending was quite fun. But overall, I just felt like this one just took a bit too long to get going, and so I did give this one a 6 out of 10, which is a pretty big variance for us, comparatively speaking. Per usual, we're pretty close, but yeah, for whatever reason, this one just seemed to drag a bit and couldn't quite get into it until the end. But the ending was great. I just felt like maybe we could have gotten there quicker, or maybe pick up the pace a bit sooner. So with that, we will move in. We'll move on to the next match. This one often dubbed as one of the worst WrestleMania matches of all time. So I have no doubt this one will have some talking points. This has Michael Cole with Jack Swagger going up against Jerry the King Lawler with Stone Cold Steve Austin as the very, very laissez-faire special guest referee. He is smirking, I feel like, for 90% of this match. I assume that was intentional, but if it wasn't, I have to feel bad for him because what was going on in the ring was laughable. It's just, I guess, depends on the mood you're in, how you receive it. So that's when I'm going to pass it over to you, KP. Curious to get your thoughts on everything that happened here. Obviously, there are some pros and there are lots of cons as well. So very interested to see what you have to say on this one.
Yeah, this one's tough. This one's difficult to really sort of analyze in any sort of way to make it sound good. Um, I'll be genuinely just honest. It was awful in terms of the match content itself. It was just really slow and had a sheer lack of quality from start to finish. What I will say about it is that it was kind of funny and it was a little entertaining at least. So I guess it had that. It had an element of enjoyment in it somewhere. Watching Cole sort of like, be really slimy and sort of like trying to escape from Jerry Lawler in the coal mine to begin with, which is his part on the outside. Yeah, that was quite funny. I did enjoy the sort of like way he was sort of trying to get out of the situation. And yeah, we see sort of like some entertaining moments with Stone Cold, as you've already sort of like glossed over very quickly. As the special guest referee in this one, especially with the way the match ended as well. Yeah, it's just a really odd situation. We see Jerry Lawler tapping out Michael Cole with the ankle lock, and we see Stone Cold literally right up in his face, basically asking him if he's tapping, and if he's giving up. And by the way, Michael Cole taps immediately with both hands, probably for a good 40-50 seconds. And Stone Cold's having a bit of fun. He's enjoying himself. Jerry Lawler, by the way, before this point, had actually hit a diving fist drop from the second rope, which is his classic, finishing maneuver that he always used to use. But yeah, that ankle lock afterwards, just sort of like adding insult to injury for Michael Cole. And yeah, would eventually be enough to get the win at first for Jerry Lawler. Before this as well, we do see Jack Swagger, who's sort of like the trainer and coach of Michael Cole for this contest. He's in and around the action at ringside, and eventually, Michael Cole, despite having a bit of a strong start, does get overturned by Lawler. And we see Jack Swagger sort of overreacting maybe a little bit and throwing in the towel immediately, not wanting Cole to get hurt anymore. And Stone Cold just used it to wipe off his bald head, to wipe off the sweat. And yeah, it's quite a funny moment there. But yeah, he gets a stunner for his efforts, Jack Swagger. We don't really see him after that one until the very end of the matchup, the post-match segment. But yeah, once the decision eventually is called for and the tap out is, awarded, Jerry and Stone Cold are celebrating in the ring. We see Booker T come on in to join the celebrations. He gets involved at one point as a spinneroonie, and then he gets a stunner for his for his efforts, because why not? And then we see the anonymous Raw general manager, which is the little machine, the laptop at ringside. We hear that infamous notification sound. Josh Matthews, poor Josh Matthews, who's one of the commentators for the night, or was up until this matchup anyway. He would go and he would read the email, basically saying how, according to the general manager, Stone Cold overstepped his mark, got a bit too physical, and because of that, the match would actually be awarded to Michael Cole as a disqualification, thanks to the physicality of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So obviously, they're not too happy about that. Jerry Lawler comes over to Josh Matthews. He insists he's just the messenger boy. He has to repeat himself like 3 times, I think it is, in the end. Jerry Lawler keeps asking him to say it just one more time. And yeah, Jerry rolls Josh into the ring. Stone Cold hits a stunner and lays him out. We don't see Josh Matthews for the rest of the night. By the way, he's out of commission here. So yeah, we then get this weird sort of moment where Stone Cold and Jerry Lawler once again are celebrating. So yeah, I don't know, it's a bit odd, but yeah, regardless of the fact, it's just not very good. It's very weird, and the decision at the end is just a bit mind-boggling, to be honest. And I'm sure it was just to give a talking point, just to give Cole something just to, have over Jerry Lawler, and that's essentially what I took from this one. I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. It's not a good matchup, so it has to be quite low. And I think maybe that's generous. I don't know. Perhaps it's not. What did you make of this one? Is 2.5 in your opinion generous? And how about just the general sort of vibe overall? It's just very bizarre. But yeah, not a classic.
I think bizarre is a good word to use to describe this match. Listen, I think Jack Swagger added some experience to Cole's repertoire. That was kind of the point of having him as a coach. But even so, should Cole have been able to dish out that much offense to a man, which these stats shocked me as well, so I just wanted to bring them up. Jerry the King Lawler has been wrestling since 1970. So at this point has 41 years of in-ring experience. And after this match, I was just curious, would this, was this his last match? No. The man did not retire until 2023. So that is 53 years total of in-ring experience. Should Michael Cole, an announcer, mind you, be able to come in and have any sort of control over a match? In my opinion, no. So that was just kind of the beginning of the issues for me. And yeah, back to the main point here. Jerry has a pretty high match rating overall in his career. I just think most of that is outside of WWE, and so I don't have a very good kind of knowledge of what he has done. But clearly a man of experience, and so why did Cole? Why was he able to get in any offense? So that was my biggest issue from out of the gate. But if not taking this match seriously, which obviously it wasn't meant to be taken that way, I found it entertaining. It was funny. Just seeing Michael Cole kind of as that heel was just bizarre to me. Obviously, he's far from that role today. So it was just funny to see him as that salami heel, as you kind of alluded to there. The King being the good guy. I don't. It was just a very interesting dynamic, and the in ring match with Stone Cold, Stone Colding it up essentially. The tap out bit was hilarious. Stunning anyone and everyone in his path. That's what got him to where he ended up being at the end of his career. Very famous for just passing out stunners for free. So I love that. That got a good chuckle out of me as well. And then if you don't like if you don't dislike the match enough to have the anonymous Raw GM take place for the first time that evening, I think I've alluded to as well. I wasn't into wrestling at this time, but I've heard lots and lots of things about both this match, which I don't think it's as bad as people say. It just the whole vibe and the feel of the match was just, it was just random. But I feel like it was working. Like the dynamic between them was entertaining, maybe a bit too much, but yeah, I feel like the actual match itself is far from the worst match I've seen on the WrestleMania stage, having gone through these first 27. But yeah, the anonymous GM kind of getting the win to Cole was kind of the icing on the cake. Like, why? But then not to shoot the messenger, but King and Stone Cold then taking care of Matthews and Booker T in the process as well. So if you could just step back and kind of turn off the brain for a bit, I think it's entertaining, it's funny. But in terms of the match, obviously it is far from a classic, as you kind of mentioned. But yeah, if I'm thinking of top 10 worst matches, this probably isn't even being put on it, just because the overall factor was more entertaining to me than a lot of other matches that we've seen in the first 27. So with that, I do give it a 3 out of 10. So it is a bit higher, and clearly I'm referring to the kind of segment as a whole, which take that for what you will. But yeah, 3 out of 10. I've seen a lot worse. So with that, we'll quickly move on to the next match, which has the Undertaker defending his 18-0 streak up against the Game Triple H in a no holds barred match. It felt like up until this point, we really hadn't got, at least in my opinion, a good match, a WrestleMania worthy match. I do feel like this was that turning page, that turning point. KP, do you agree? And what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I do. I do agree. I think this one was, very, very solid, and it just, yeah, was a really fun, enjoyable matchup to watch. I think it probably was about just over half an hour. I think, really, if I was sort of like, because I was at a point where I basically just like having a look and see what the time was out of pure curiosity at one point, because like, this has gone on for a long time now. But it didn't feel like it was a long time when I was watching it. It just generally felt like we were sort of like watching this match that sort of like had like a grand feel to it. Obviously, the streak at this point is legendary. So it does feel like it's very 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 larger than life at this point. So I think just as I was watching, I was like, wow, this must be quite some way in now. I think I was just watching. I was just admiring just sort of like the depths that these two had to go through in order to get to where they were in the matchup at the very very end of the contest. And I say what they had to go through, it was solid because of what Triple H did to Undertaker. He put him through probably more punishment than I've seen anybody ever do at WrestleMania. Just generally speaking, it was nuts. There was so much going on. We saw Triple H shove Undertaker into the coal mine, which is, as I mentioned in the previous matchup, Michael Cole's pod. He goes crashing through that. That's like really early in the contest. We see a spine buster from Triple H through an announce table onto Undertaker. We see 3 pedigrees throughout the contest. We see a tombstone power driver that Triple H actually uses on Taker at one point. A chair shot to the face. That's just like the majority of like the big sort of things that we see happening from Triple H to Undertaker. And, by the way, Undertaker hit his fair share of big heavy moves on Triple H as well. But just that sort of, that level of intensity that Triple H sort of initiated in the contest towards Undertaker, and by the end of the matchup, he still doesn't get the win, is quite something and quite incredible, to be fair. Triple H looks really, really strong. And Undertaker, once all was said and done, he was absolutely out of it. I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment, but basically, we see Undertaker getting the victory here via submission. Triple H starts running out of ideas, goes to ringside to grab a sledgehammer. Obviously, we see that throughout the course of his career on many occasions. Undertaker locks in a last ditch out of nowhere, just by any means necessary, try and get the win, sort of clutch maneuver. He pops in the Hell's Gates, and after a pretty lengthy struggle from Triple H, he does eventually tap out, and Undertaker gets that win via submission. But yeah, because of what has led up until that moment and that point, and just the longevity of the contest and the absolute, just battle that Taker had to go through, Taker got the win, but Triple H was the man that got up and walked out of WrestleMania, and that is quite a big, important talking point after this one, going into next year. But because of Taker being sort of like completely out of it, he actually gets escorted to the back. There's like a trolley style thing that he gets placed on, and he gets taken to the back via that. But yeah, it was a crazy match at times, to be fair. Some huge kickouts, making some iconic moments, to be fair. Absolutely huge, larger than life, really tense occasions. And yeah, just had a really, really good feel to it. I loved this match. Thought it was great. And it might have felt like it was maybe dragging on a couple of occasions in the very middle of the matchup, but it was very quickly just that slight minor issue was completely removed probably about like 3 or 4 minutes later. Just the intensity levels just keep turning it up a notch. Really, really great to see. And just as it got to those late stages, you was just like wow, like this like what is actually going to be taking place next. I was quite a fan of this one. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Absolutely on the higher end of Undertaker's WrestleMania matches throughout the years. And I think just this is just sort of the peak era for Undertaker at WrestleMania. We saw like the likes of Edge and Shawn Michaels on a couple of occasions. Now Triple H. This is really just the peak era for Undertaker at WrestleMania, in my opinion. But what did you make of this one, Nick, in terms of your overall rating for it, how the match flowed, the intensity that was brought to it? Did it do it for you?
Yes, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more in terms of Taker, absolutely hitting his stride. it almost makes up for all those stinkers we got before. But yeah, both of these men took an absolute beating. So many finishers. Props to that chair as well. That has to be close to or exceeding the number of chair shots a single chair had withstood. Before that, the King jokingly mentioning it should be inducted into the Hall of Fame made me chuckle because it was just both men were just beaten with it. Triple H hitting Taker with that tombstone after pleading with him to stay down, then bringing in the sledgehammer only for Taker to lock in that Hell's Gate to get the win. I adored that ending. Like you said, you could maybe argue that some parts of this match maybe drug on longer than they needed to, but that ending for me, for how long Papa H was in that submission to then grab the sledgehammer in the ring, but then to not have enough within him to actually use it and then end up tapping out. I just thought that was a great, like, that was just, chef's kiss for me. I thought that was a great moment. And a great contest for the streak to continue to now 19-0. Then Taker getting carted off after the match by the medical staff because he had no more, life in him, so to speak. So, yeah, apparently that was scripted. I was curious myself because he was selling it quite well. And then obviously Triple H walked off, so that had me thinking maybe it wasn't scripted. But apparently that was part of the script. And Vince ended up hating it. So, one more thing that Vince and I, don't agree on. There are lots and lots of those things. So, I'd love to say that it did work, but I think if that was scripted, it was kind of strange. You alluded to the fact that Triple H dished out a lot more offense, but I think both men took a good beating here. So I think if that was scripted, I think Triple H shouldn't have just so readily walked off. If we are going to sell that, obviously. I'm sure they had their reasons for it, but I think that could have maybe helped, sell that both men were just kind of went through it. But maybe starting to hint at the fact that Undertaker streak wasn't going to be able to last forever. But on this particular night, it did hit that 19-0 mark. So with that, and speaking of plan, it said that this match was supposed to be the main event and was scheduled as such up until about a week before the actual event took place. So we'll quickly discuss if that decision was a good one. Spoiler alert, though, this was also my match of the night, assuming it was yours as well. Rating for me is a 9 out of 10. Just a great quality contest. I've hit on Triple H being an underrated talent. He gets dubbed as burying a lot, but a lot of his matches, especially on the big stage, always seem to deliver. He just has that certain factor to him that makes the match feel very important, and dishes out tons of offense, albeit at a slower pace than maybe someone would like. So, with that, we'll move on to the next match. For better or worse, changing things up here. Dolph Ziggler with Vicky Guerrero and LayCool going up against John Morrison, Trish Stratus, and Snooki. Yes, Snooki from Jersey Shore. Yeah, KP, do your best to make some positive out of this one if you can. And Unfortunately, I don't think there is a ton of opportunity to do so.
Yeah, positives are few and far between here in, in this particular matchup. Very similar feel to that of the 4 versus 4 match that we had earlier in the night. It was just quite short, and there wasn't really much to unwrap in this one. What I've noted down here, quite interestingly, is that from one of the teams, and that would be the team of Dolph Ziggler and LayCool, there were absolutely 0 tags from that team. Michelle McCool started the matchup and she ended the match. And I think on the other side, there was only actually 1 tag as well. I think Trish Stratus would start for the team of the faces, I guess you could say, in this occasion. And yeah, Snooki would tag in. So she was the only tag in the match, which was quite bizarre to me. So yeah, that was just quite interesting there. I just thought I'd point that out, to be fair. But yeah, the match sort of hits the outside. We see Trish Stratus going, down to LayCool and takes them both out on the outside of the ring. Dolph Ziggler then has a very quick moment of trying to sort of like get up in the face of of Trish, and he eats a Starship Pain, which is my positive for the matchup, because the Starship Pain from John Morrison was very, very nice, to be fair. He does it to the outside of the ring, which, in fairness, we don't see that often in his career. Normally, it's obviously in the ring, so I thought that was quite nice to see. That was like the main positive for me personally. That nullifies Dolph Ziggler, takes him out of the contest, and then we see sort of like Layla and Trish being cancelled out on the outside. We see Michelle McCool go back into the ring. Snooki gets tagged in by Trish Stratus. And we see a handspring back elbow from Snooki. That sort of gets a pop from the crowd. And once Michelle McCool is down, we see Snooki go for a handspring splash, and that would be enough to get the 1, 2, 3 and the win. It's just a not. It's just there's not a lot to it. It really wasn't a very good contest. Like I say, too short and nothing really to discuss in terms of like a lot of quality and like a lot of depth. But I basically just laid out essentially most of the stuff that happened throughout this matchup. It started off a little bit with animosity, and there's a little bit of a very small sort of brawl at the very start before the bell officially rang. Yeah, I don't know. Bits and bobs here and there. Make of it what you like. I gave it a 3. I don't know if I felt like I had to give it higher than the Michael Cole match, so I don't know. It's just a really difficult one to really discuss. I think you could argue it'd probably be about the same quality, because I guess that one was entertaining. I got 3 down. I'm just gonna stick with it. But yeah, it wasn't great. I feel that might be generous, but what did you make of this one? How does it compare to those matches that we've seen already across the course of the night? And what about Snooki and getting a victory here? In her, I'm pretty sure, one and only ever match in WWE.
Yeah, the Snooki bit. Obviously, this was during an era I wasn't watching, and it's times like these, Snooki being involved gets a lot of hate, I think, overall. And yeah, I think we're grasping at straws here, picking at a rating, but just one of those matches. The same thing as you mentioned, as the tag match, and you could argue the Michael Cole and Jerry match, where it's like, was there really nothing else you could put on the Mania card? This is supposed to be the best pay-per-view of the year. And a lot of this Mania just has me thinking quite the opposite. That penultimate match of the night always appears to be an absolute wild card of a slot. You either get just absolutely terrible matches more often than not. I feel like is the case, but sometimes you get some decent matches, but they always are very hesitant to put on something good because they don't want to override the main event. Which, don't worry, we've already done that. This, just why it's just random. Surely there was something better. I think maybe an actual women's title match would have been nice. And on that, just to quickly hit, apparently after this match, John Morrison very much gave the cold shoulder, the silent treatment, if you will, to Trish Stratus, because he did not agree to him being on the card. Which, props to him. He recognized the significance was very, very, very low. Maybe argue was 0 of this match to get Snooki on the card to kind of beat Michelle McCool, who's one of the better talents. I think that's fair to say. In that fashion, who has no wrestling experience. So it's not a new issue. It's just a reemerged issue, I suppose we could say. But yeah, John did not think that he deserved to be on this card, and he didn't think this match deserved to be on there over others. Obviously, we didn't get a tag match or a tag title match either. So I think just one of the many, many issues with this WrestleMania. But yeah, I don't think I gave my rating 2.5 out of 10. Yeah, so it's, that's the third match that's a 3 or under, I think, for both of us. And I did find the Cole match a little more entertaining just because it had some entertainment value, whereas this one, outside of Snooki doing, the move that she had laid out there, which was impressive, but also, one move does not make a good wrestler. So quickly moving on, we will do getting into the main event, which has John Cena in his 8th straight main event going up against The Miz with Alex Riley for that WWE Championship. So, as if the writing wasn't already on the wall enough, or at least that's my thought process going in here, The Miz as champion is introduced first. So, something they almost never did at that time. So, Yeah, KP, this one was bizarre, and I think just it just kind of goes with the flow of WrestleMania that we have so far. Curious to get your thoughts on all of this, and then of course the post match happenings, which knowing the storyline that we had or the lack thereof of this last year, that it also included The Rock. This one just kind of it irritates me, but also makes me laugh quite a bit as well because how does someone see that story make anyone look good other than themselves? But again, kind of similar to what we've been seeing over the last year when he was involved. So yeah, curious to get your thoughts on all of this. Funny enough, the same man being impacted this last year as it was in this year. So yeah, very curious to hear your thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, John Cena's not exactly shy from being in these WWE Championship matches at WrestleMania, is he? He's been ever present in the situation over the last number of years, and yeah, this is another one on the the list to add to the collection. In terms of whether this one was an all timer or if it was just okay, I think I'd lean on the side it was just okay. It was fine. It wasn't a particularly great contest, but it had layers and it had drama to it, so I guess there's there's that you can make from this one. Alex Riley, he's on the outside here, just playing a little bit of a interference and just being a bit of a menace towards John Cena and making life a bit more difficult for him. He does eventually get nullified by Cena, but it takes a little bit to get to that point. And the crowd, they are very much anti-Cena through this contest, and they make that known. They're not quiet about that. And yeah, just generally how the match flows, it's going okay. It's going fine. And we see the original match ending with John Cena and The Miz going over the barricade at ringside, and then they both get counted out. So when obviously, a championship match ends with both men being counted out, uh, the champion does retain their title, and it's a double count out decision. So that is what's declared by the announcer at the time. And once that's all said and done, Miz's music is playing. He gets given the WWE Championship, and we then hear the music of The Rock, play aloud, and he heads on down to the ring. And like you said, very prime opportunity for the host to make this match a bit more about himself. And he gets into the ring, and the email from the anonymous general manager of Raw mentioned that moments earlier, in this video, and that goes off again. The Rock goes over to read it, starts reading it out, and ends up telling the machine that it doesn't matter what it thinks, and just throws it onto the ground, and then gets back into the ring, and then makes his own decision. So he decides to restart the contest, this time with no disqualifications, with no countouts, and yeah, we can't have WrestleMania ending in the way it did. So Miz and Cena, they're basically getting back to the to ringside at this point. Miz, by the way, has absolutely no idea what's going on because he got concussed during the landing on the outside of the barricade. So at this point, he literally is just going with emotions, and fair play to Miz for everything that he does after that, because it just goes quite smoothly and he does a really good job of it. But yeah, basically we see Cena rolling Miz into the ring, and he looks for an attitude adjustment immediately, once the match is restarted. Miz escapes onto the apron, and we see Rock literally getting into the ring and right behind John Cena as this altercation's happening. Cena turns around, Rock goes for a rock bottom, lays out John Cena, and then Miz covers John Cena in order to get the victory and to retain his WWE Championship. So the restarted match probably was about a minute and a half at most, I would say. Didn't seem to be very, very long. And yeah, it was just more about, making that moment between The Rock and John Cena, which sort of does play a part going forward in WrestleManias to come. But yeah, it was okay. It wasn't anything special, and it was just about that moment, like I mentioned just a moment ago. Miz has the WWE Championship in his possession post match, and there's sort of a stare down between him and The Rock. I'd still think at this point Miz has absolutely no idea what's really going on, but he sort of remembers what he's got to do, and he's obviously staring down The Rock. Rock gets into the ring, lays out Miz, and then eventually hits the people's elbow, and then that will be the show basically said and done. So yeah, in terms of a main event match for WrestleMania, this one, it had a moment and it had a bit of drama, but was it a great match? I would say probably not. It was just fine and okay. I gave it, generally speaking, a 7 out of 10. Yeah, I think I've basically gone through everything that I need to really discuss about this one. Otherwise, I'd be repeating myself. But yeah, just unfortunately didn't really hit that main event sort of level that I think, we've seen over the years and like, here and there. It's not the worst WrestleMania main event by any means necessary. There have been worse than this, but it's just nowhere near the best in my opinion. 7 out of 10 is okay. It's fine. What did you make of this one then, Nick? Main event wise, was it deserving to be in this spot? Obviously, you've already mentioned Triple H and Undertaker earlier on in the evening. That would have been a better suited main event, but yeah, you look at this one, you look at The Rock, you look at that moment that's been made between him and Cena, and obviously then you can think, well, that's the ground set for the next WrestleMania. So yeah, what did you make of this one, and how did you feel it went?
Yeah, it did. It did set up. And I think they ended up doing it twice, if I recall correctly. The Rock and Cena, and who needs a year, who needs 2 years? You could argue that for sure. But I guess we'll get into that when we get to the actual matches that take place. Yeah, this shouldn't have been the main event. I think that's obvious. But as we get that ending, I'm like, wow, surely that can't be the ending. And of course, The Rock comes down, kind of giving his best Vince impression there. The anonymous Raw GM coming into play once again. Rock doesn't care what the anonymous GM says. Restarts the match. I'm sitting here thinking, thank goodness, maybe they'll actually give us a decent match. They don't. The Rock hits Cena with the rock bottom. Miz concussed at the time. I think was probably if that wasn't the original plan, The Rock takes out the Miz as well. The Rock promises one of the best, if not, I think actually promises the best WrestleMania of all time, and it is far, far from that. But The Rock, probably in his eyes, being a heavy focus throughout the night, maybe that was the best in his eyes. So, yeah, not a great ending to a not very good WrestleMania. I think that's kind of my standpoint at this point in the evening. Just felt like a lot of this Mania just wasn't really Mania worthy. So I did give this one a 5 out of 10. Again, a big variance there between the two of us. Just felt kind of there, and very loosely done. In terms of The Rock being involved, even if it does set up a match for a year in advance, yeah, not for me. But regardless, that is WrestleMania in the books, WrestleMania 27. KP, let us know your overall kind of rating here, just your overall thoughts, and we will get this one wrapped up.
But yeah, this is going back, a bit of nostalgia for me personally, because around this sort of time, I was like starting to watch wrestling, a lot more and more. I've been into it for about a year prior to this, but just generally speaking, it was a bit like, I don't know, the interest levels were going up from me. Then to have watched like all the WrestleManias and everything like that, during this project, and obviously everything since, this event in real life, and after that up until modern day. I do sort of look back on this one and I think, well, yeah, this one maybe wasn't quite hitting the heights that I think maybe younger me thought it might have done. But yeah, just the matches overall as a average here put together, it comes out as an overall of a 6 out of 10, which I guess doesn't sound like it's a very good rating, but comparatively speaking to what I think you're going to be saying in a couple of moments, I think it's probably quite high. So interested to see what you've got yours coming out as. But yeah, just generally speaking, if you take away Undertaker and Triple H from this WrestleMania, for me personally, you're relying on CM Punk and Randy Orton. Obviously, you've had your critiques on that match yourself, so I guess that's already a talking point. But yeah, I mean that just shows a level of quality, I say lack of really, throughout the general sort of depth of this show. By removing that one match, it does seem like it's a really, really, really poor WrestleMania. So they had this one to at least sort of save them, I guess, a little bit, but only in a little way. It does come out as a 6, which is quite low overall. So yeah, not exactly the best WrestleMania. Some matches that were just really questionable on the card. You talk of the likes of the 4 versus 4 tag match between the Core and Marella, Big Show, Kane, and Kofi. You got Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler. How that came to play, who the hell knows? Obviously we do know, but how that actually got to WrestleMania is quite another topic of conversation. And then you look at Snooki, Trish Stratus, John Morrison, LayCool, and Ziggler. Yeah, there were just some really questionable choices here, and it didn't make for a great show overall. But Nick, now's your chance to have your say. What do you make of this one in terms, just generally speaking, the flow of the show, the ups, the downs, and what was that overall rating? I'm quite intrigued to see what you made of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the downs heavily outweigh the pros, or at least for me. Um, I would say one of the worst WrestleManias, probably, easily on the top 10 worst WrestleManias up until this point for me. Um, you know, um, Despite The Rock's promises towards the beginning of this, I think it makes it funnier throughout the night when you're like, this is not a good Mania. Usually we have at least one match with floating around the two or three, just because that's just kind of how it goes. You have to have the matches not taken seriously. But for us to have three matches kind of floating around that on an already pretty small card, comparatively speaking, at 8 matches, I think that just kind of almost half the matches are of that quality. I think that's an issue. Um, Another issue being Del Rio and The Miz are really the only two kind of newer stars, younger stars. A lot of other matches relying on older talent at this point. The Rock being obviously at the pinnacle, the peak of that issue, to bring him back because, why not? I think that is an issue that WWE is having and has always struggled with. Even current day product, a lot of their talent is on the older side. For whatever reason, they have issues building new talent and seem to always want to rely on old reliable or reliables. So I think that is an issue with this Mania. Yeah, obviously Undertaker, Triple H being the highlight, and it's not even close. As you kind of already said, if you take out that one, you probably have it's probably very close to one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, and that's saying something. Those first few manias, in the first 10 ish, were rough. We're very rough. And this one I think deserves to be mentioned in the likes of those worst ones. So, my rating overall is 5 out of 10. Even that kind of seems a bit high for how low a lot of these were. I think, like I said, Triple H and Undertaker obviously saved this Mania, at least in my eyes. So, with that, we will quickly move on. Hopefully, WrestleMania 28 is vastly better, but this was not an enjoyable WrestleMania for me. And I'm not super sad that I this was during an era that I wasn't involved in. So, yeah, curious to hear all of your thoughts. Let us know what you thought of this WrestleMania, what your highlights were, your favorite matches, least favorite matches. Can you make sense of some of the things that were done here, or are you kind of left scratching your head like I was? Would love to hear from you all below. Of course, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that helps us out tremendously. We'll be back shortly with WrestleMania 28, and of course our Raw, NXT, and SmackDown recaps as well. If you like what we're doing here, please do let us know. Any feedback is very much appreciated. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.